In the early 1950s, Ford undertook a ton of market research, and it showed over half of Americans would be in the 5,000 plus income bracket by the year 1965. The people in this bracket would be mostly buying mid-priced cars, which were estimated to be about 60% of the car market at the time. It was estimated that this could be worth an additional 400,000 cars a year sold for Ford. Ford began to compare its roster to the other big three manufacturers and realized that their mid-price offerings were lacking. The Lincoln lineup, while intended to be competing with Cadillac, was determined to be competing more so with Chrysler and GM's mid-range lineups, mainly Dodge, DeSoto, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, and Buick. The only dedicated mid-price offering they had was the Mercury brand. So as buyers moved up from their lower-priced options, they would have to move to other manufacturers who offered them cars in the mid-price range. A decision was made to move the Lincoln brand upmarket to better compete with Cadillac and create a division that would effectively compete with all the other mid-price divisions. In 1955, using the code name E-Car for experimental car, the decision was made to go ahead with the creation of a new brand. The company eventually decided on the name Edsel in honor of Henry Ford's son, Edsel B. Ford. Edsel was president of Ford Motor Company from 1919 to 1943. He was instrumental in the U.S. war effort with his goal of producing one B-24 bomber every hour. He died in 1943 from stomach cancer, allegedly brought on from the immense stress he put himself under. Trying to find out who the perfect target was, further research was done to find the right personality for the buyers of these new cars. Researchers determined that Mercury buyers were generally more younger and hot rod inclined. Pontiac, Dodge, and the others were more inclined to be purchased by middle-aged people. Ford wanted the Edsel brand to be a happy medium of both. In a November 30th, 1959 Time magazine article, a researcher was quoted as saying that the Edsel was, in quotations here, the smart car for the younger executive or professional family on the way up. On November 19, 1956, the Edsel division was officially established and Ford revealed its name to the world. From that moment on, the hype machine went into full overdrive. Details were fed to the industry press, and stories with facts like Ford was building an entirely new car started appearing in national magazines and used taglines like "Car of the Future." A dealer network was set up with 1,187 dealers set across the entire United States. The hype machine didn't slow down in 1957 either. Two-page ads with blurred cars appeared in the July 22, 1957 release of Life magazine. The entire project was shrouded in mystery. Ford was in this project by now for $250 million in research costs, advertising, tooling, and production facility costs. This would be the equivalent of $2,359,365,942.03 in today's dollars when adjusted for inflation. So this was clearly a massive, expensive gamble with high hopes to capture close to that $400,000 a year mark. An ambitious first-year sales goal of 200,000 cars was set. On September 4th, 1957, the curtain was pulled back and the Edsels made their public debut in what was known as E-Day. An estimated 2.5 million Americans poured into Edsel dealerships that day to view the car of the future. Cars like the Edsel Citation, Corsair, Pacer, Ranger, and wagons like the Edsel Villager, Bermuda, and Roundup. Some of the futuristic innovations for the Edsel brand were a floating speedometer that would glow at a set speed to warn you if you were speeding, the Teletouch push-button automatic transmission that was located in the center of the steering wheel, a 3-stage cooling system, and a 60-40 split front seat, to name a few. All Edsels also came with self-adjusting brakes, which weren't new, but not common on vehicles at that time. Ford also had a 1-hour-long TV special on CBS which aired on October 13, 1957, called The Edsel Show. Preempting The Ed Sullivan Show for one evening, The Edsel Show starred Bing Crosby and featured a star-studded cast with the likes of Frank Sinatra, Rosemary Clooney, Louis Armstrong, Bob Hope, and more. The hour-long musical that highlighted all the Edsel models was a smash hit. But did it translate into success for Ford and the Edsel brand? Remember earlier when I said the first year sales goal was 200,000 cars? Well, for the 1958 model year, the Edsel brand sold approximately 63,000 cars in the United States and another 5,000 in Canada. They were nowhere near their 200,000 car goal that they were aiming for. Now, while those sales numbers were a major disappointment for Ford and the Edsel team, to put them into context, they were still the second highest sales numbers for a new automotive brand launched ever, second to DeSoto, who sold roughly 81,000 cars when Chrysler launched the brand in 1929. Nonetheless, this was a major failure given the investment that Ford made into the Edsel brand. The public and media reception was not great either. Phrases like, "it looks like an Oldsmobile sucking a lemon," or "Mercury pushing a toilet seat" were used to describe Edsel cars. The problem was, the hype machine just went too far and promised too much to people. Think about this for a second. The world just entered the nuclear age a decade ago. Consumers were promised the car of the future, and instead, they get an ugly Oldsmobile with a few unique options. It was disappointing, to say the least. Now, design and marketing flaws aside, there was a host of quality control issues that worked against Edsel as well. There were no dedicated Edsel manufacturing plants. The Edsels were manufactured at Ford and Mercury plants in between the other cars coming off the assembly line. Assembly lines were modified so that every 8th car coming off would be an Edsel. This created a challenging environment for workers who would have to be switching between vehicles during the assembly process. As each vehicle came off the assembly line for the day, it was assigned a quality score after being tested. If the average quality score for the day passed, then every vehicle, regardless of their defects, would be shipped off to dealers. Now remember, Edsels only accounted for 1/8 of the vehicles being built, but they were averaged in with the other 7/8 vehicles. So this resulted in Edsels with extremely poor quality being shipped to dealerships, often missing parts with major flaws. Dealers were left with instructions on how to fix or replace parts on cars, and oftentimes were not able to do so. This process led to Edsel's reputation as being a lemon. If those issues weren't bad enough, the Edsel brand also had to contend with a late 1950s recession that shifted consumer buying habits towards economy and compact cars like the Volkswagen Beetle. In 1956, the year the Edsel brand was announced, the Beetle sold approximately 40,000 cars in the United States. But by 1959, that number more than doubled to over 88,000 cars. For the 1959 model year, Edsel pared down its lineup to the top 3 selling models, the Ranger and Corsair sedans, and the Villager wagons. They also turned down the styling and removed some of the features like the Teletouch transmission shifter, but it was no help. The 1959 model sold 48,891 cars in the United States and only 2,505 cars in Canada. For the 1960 model year, Edsel pared down its offerings even further, carrying only the Ranger and the Villager. They also ditched the vertical grille that was synonymous with the Oldsmobile Sucking a lemon look. But at this point, the writing was on the wall. Edsel only produced 2,846 vehicles between October 15th and November 19th, 1959, before they announced the Edsel brand was dead. In the end, the Edsel endeavour was a complete failure. The brand sold 118,287 cars and missed its break-even point by almost 50%. The financial loss was huge too, at $350 million, which adjusted for inflation in today's dollars is over $3 billion. So what went wrong? Well, a lot. There were factors outside Ford's control, like the economic recession, which shifted buyer habits. When there was research done, the mid-price segment was going to be the big moneymaker, but with the recession, it made the economy market start to boom. Many buyers, when seeing the base price cost of an Edsel, simply walked right out of the dealership. But there's plenty Ford could have controlled. A ton of research was done prior to the launch of the brand, but one thing Ford never did was test the radical styling of the Edsel with potential buyers. The whole marketing campaign was to keep the car under wraps and surprise buyers. But because of the massive hype behind it, It made it near impossible for this car to live up to expectations. There was also the quality control issues that hurt the brand's reputation. In March 1958 Popular Mechanics magazine, they had an article that covered reports of faulty welding, power steering failures, leaking trunks, and odometers not working correctly. There was also the issue with the innovative teletouch transmission. Located where the horn was, drivers would often inadvertently shift the car out of gear while meaning to honk the horn. The wiring was also routed near the exhaust and often caused mechanical issues. In the end, the Edsel story is one of which what could have gone wrong did go wrong. It's a lesson in corporate failure that Ford learned a lot from. The lessons learned from this disaster, while costly, would prove essential to Ford as they would go on to launch cars like the Mustang and others in later years that would be flawless.